Няма пряк път към здравето. Няма и пряк път към победата. Има дисциплина и категорични избори. Здравето започва от това, какво ядем и пием.
Павел Шчелин е руски политически теолог и православен християнски мислител, който свързва западните и източните традиции на политическата теология. Шчелин е учил в Централно-европейския университет в Будапеща, където е специализирал в политически науки, медийни изследвания и руска външна политика. Академичната му работа включва рецензирани изследвания върху информационната война, дигиталните медии и символичните измерения на съвременната геополитика. Мисълта на Павел Шчелин и неговите трудове са дълбоко повлияни от руските религиозни философи Бердяев, Илин, Карсавин и западни политически теолози Фьогелин, Шмидт, Агамбен, като същевременно се основава особено на светоотеческата традиция на свети Максим Изповедник. Основните философски позиции на Павел Шчелин са, че политиката винаги има религиозна основа. Това вероятно е най-характерната му теза. Според Шчелин няма неутрална политика. Дори либерализмът според него функционира като своеобразна светска религия. Шчелин твърди, че кризата на Запада е духовна, а не икономическа. Шчелин многократно казва, че цивилизациите загиват не от бедност, а от загуба на смисъл. Според Шчелин, индивидуализмът, консуматорството, разрушаването на традицията, ослабването на семействата, загубата на религиозна перспектива водят до цивилизационна криза. За Шчелин историята е преди всичко духовен процес. Тук той е силно повлиян от руската религиозна философия. Една от любимите му теми, според него хората не живеят според статистики или икономически показатели. Те живеят според митове, символи, исторически разкази, свещени образи, национални митологии. Затова, според него, днешната информационна война е всъщност борба на символите. Шчелин категорично критикува постмодернизма, радикалния индивидуализъм, технокрацията, идеята, че технологиите могат да заменят морала и критикува най-вече политиката без религиозна и етична основа, геополитиката като бизнес и война. What is, let's say, Ukraine? What is Ukraine?
Like it's the sect which is responsible for the genocide, for the Volhynian massacre, and basically it's you can consider them like if you give them the most charitable readings, they kind of emerge within the general process of Eastern European nationalism. They believe in a holy Ukraine, also in a holy Ukraine, a sacred Ukraine, and they are ready to sacrifice anything and everything for it. This group, like it basically shares, I would say, the ideology of one of its founders, Roman Shukhevich. And to understand Shukhevich, you need to be like very clear. Basically, it says, so if out of 20,000 Ukrainian population of Ukrainian territory, only 10 remain, it's fine.
How do you understand Russia as a civilization, culture project, political project, or the last empire, or the empire of the like Jedis? I don't know how to...
Well, I would not call it Jedis. Okay. I will also give you different ways of understanding Russia, and your audience can choose which one like they would find the most appropriate in the current moment. So one line of argument is Russia as a historical entity, and this historical entity has a continuity at least from the Saint Vladimir's baptismal of Russian people. And for example, during the service to the Russian saints, which happens in June, there is this famous line, "Holy Russia, keep your Orthodox faith, for this is your standing stone, founding stone, for this is something which holds you together." Really hard to translate the word утверждение in English, but basically something like this.
Yeah.
And this is a subject which is its purpose, which is its fate, which is what it should be. However, at the same time, the story of Russia is parallel, you can want to the story of Israel from the Old Testament, because you can say if you read the story, it's like Israel is constantly rebelling against its calling. And the story of Russia is this constant process of like rebellion, you can put it this way. So we don't want to do this. We want to be like the part of West, or sometimes we want to be part of the East, or sometimes we just don't want to do anything. We want to run away into our forest and don't deal with the global history, all and all and all. When, let's say, there is a critical mass of this desire, then some time of trouble comes. Either Mongol comes, or Hitler comes, or Napoleon comes, or Poles come, etc., etc., etc.
Lech Walesa in our studio say that Russian is imperia.
Russia is not an empire, because empire is illegal in part of status. But if you substantially, of course Russia is an empire. And it's a good thing, because what does empire mean? Like, just to be clarified, to me to say that a certain people is building an empire is a compliment.
But what happens, why has Russia become so heavily demonized in the West?
Sorry, Poles, Bulgarians, Serbians, you will never be part of the West. You will never be part of, you were not part of this empire. Like, this is ultimately important. And that's why, you see, in the West, you simply don't have this name for partnership, what Russians mean by partnership. This idea of we are super different, but we are equal. And this comes to the whole philosophy of Herrschaft, as I would say in German. Like, in Western, the philosophy of domination is very Hobbesian or Nietzschean or etc. It means that if I'm above, you are low. Master and slave.
Yeah.
Master and slave dialectic, if you want to put it this way. Russia doesn't have it. Russia has different understanding. It has this dream of equal partnership. So it's either will end with, as they call it, decolonization of Russia. If Russia loses the conflict, it will end basically with Russia turning into Yugoslavia. And if Russia wins, it will end with effectively dissolution or disappearance of the Ukrainian state. The sole purpose of Ukrainian state, like, because it's founded on this like very narrow like understanding of this Ukrainian nationalist sect, is to be anti-Russian. So Christians are persecuted in Ukraine, Orthodox people are persecuted in Ukraine, and exactly this horrible, hard, tragic time, which later we remember as times of saints.
Hello, Pavel, Mr. Ščelin. How are you? Where are you? If it's not a secret.
Thank you very much. I'm fine. I currently reside in States, basically, in the United States.
Yeah. First, from our question is, what is, let's say, Ukraine? What is Ukraine? Ukraine. What is Ukraine for you? For the history, maybe.
I think it will be helpful to answer your question from four different angles. So the first angle is, you can say, geopolitical. Ukraine is a geo-drone, you know, like drones which are flying and like means of weapons. And historically this territory and been used by many different agents, let's say the highest bidder, to cause pain and trouble for its opponents and its enemies. If you look in the 17th century, if you look in the 16th century, you would see how, let's say, Turkey used Ukraine to cause pain to Poland, Poland used Ukraine to cause pain to Russia, and Russia, when possible, also used this territory to strengthen its interests. If you're looking into modern times, it's from this perspective, it's a geo-drone which is used by European Union and NATO countries to deal maximum amount of damage to Russia. And obviously from this perspective, the fate of this entity is simply irrelevant. It's an irrelevant question. You don't care, about the fate of the drone. Even if the drone is destroyed, but it hits the target, it fulfilled its purpose. That's one line of argument. Second line of argument, I would say, is more historiosophy. So it's a combination of history and philosophy. And you can say it's what makes this story tragic for Russians, and this story is relevant only for Russians, that as this geodrone is used a part of Russian people. So from this perspective, Ukraine, it's a part of Russian people who, due to different historical processes, followed not always the same path as main Russian land. And this part, however, is often been more willing than the others to basically sell its soul for the Western dreams. For your audience, I would highly recommend reading a short novel of one of the greatest Russian writers of the 19th century, Nikolai Gogol, who himself was originally from Malorussia, so ethnically we would call him now Ukrainian, though he himself never called himself Ukrainian. And the novel is called Taras Bulba. And in Taras Bulba, there is a story of Taras, like the Zaporozhian Cossack, and his two sons, Andriy and Ostap. And Andriy basically follows this path, he falls in love with the Polish girl, noble girl, and he sells his comradeship, he sells his faith, he sells his all his loyalties for the sake of being accepted as a noble Shlechtich, and basically later Taras had to kill them. It's a very tragic story, but it's a short story.
It's a very interesting story for our public. Taras said to his son, I warn you, I will kill you. This is typical in this moment, Okay.
Yeah, it's a very moment. And another famous quote is from this story is so, ну что, сынку, помогли тебе твои ляхи. So basically, son, have your Poles helped you, before he has to execute basically his son. So it's a very tragic story, but it's very relevant. So that's the second line of argument. So basically, it's a tragedy within one people. However, there are also two other lines of argument. The third line of argument, you can consider Ukraine as an identity, as a certain type of religious identity within Russia, all Russia. And the part of this identity, you can say effectively, if you know your Bible, remember this famous story between Jacob and Isaac, when the birthright is being sold for bean soup, bean stew. And basically in Russian history, there is always this part of the elite and often part of the people often wants to be just the part of the West. And if you need to sell your identity, at least part of it, maybe not all of it, but part of it, for this dream of cooperation, for this dream of being accepted as equals, for this dream of being the same as you, French, Germans, Brits, Danes, you can consider this basically general process also as a certain type of Ukrainian identity, because in the history of Russia there have been many edges, you say, many Ukrainas, and in Ukraina you often have this particularly temptation, if you want to put it this way. So you can consider it's a certain kind of temptation that big Russian cultural space has been fighting within itself, honestly, since 1,000 years ago. If you read the story of princes fighting with each other before Mongols, you can already see this pattern. And final is the narrowest, but maybe nowadays the most visible story is this literal religious sect of Ukrainian nationalists, which originated only in the late part of the 19th century. It's the sect which is responsible for the genocide, for the Volhynian massacre, and basically it's you can consider them, if you give them the most charitable readings, they emerge within the general process of Eastern European nationalism. However, it took the most, because there were proto-fascist regimes in many Eastern European countries in mid-war period. However, in Ukraine, this group took a particular religious connotation. They believe in a holy Ukraine, also in a holy Ukraine, a sacred Ukraine, and they are ready to sacrifice anything and everything for it. And the fact that it is religious, you can see that recently, yesterday, Ukrainian Rada has passed this law about the creation of pantheon of Ukrainian heroes, and literally every single war criminal of the World War II is now being glorified and being treated as sacred. And this group, like, it basically shares, I would say, the ideology of one of its founders, Roman Shukhevich. And to understand Shukhevich, you need to be, like, very clear. Basically, it says, he said, like, if out of, I might do the quote not exactly correctly, but the spirit is right. So if out of 20,000 Ukrainian population of Ukrainian territory, only 10 remain, it's fine. It's good enough price for us for the creation of pure Ukrainian state. Basically, this group is ready to kill everyone. By ready to kill, I mean, like, not they're like prepared. I think that's the best word. So they are prepared, like, let's say, if in the process of this war, like, Ukrainian population will drop to 5 million, but they will all be of this religious identity, they will be okay with it. So that's how I would answer your question from different angles.
Around this explanation, in this moment, what is Russia?